thy rod and thy staff? Here in the book of Psalms, the Old Testament God is pictured with his rod and staff. The rod here mentioned is the king's rod of discipline, and the staff is the shepherd's staff or crook. Now, for the correct understanding of this old verse, any good library book on the Egyptian religion will tell you that the ancient pharaohs were said to be ruling for God's Son, spelled S-U-N, on earth. He was called King of the Kingdom and the Great Shepherd of his sheep. In the hands of the Pharaoh god, whose arms formed the sign of the cross on his chest, were placed the royal symbols of heavenly power: the rod, which was a flail, and the staff. The rod was used to beat those who were disobedient, and the staff with the crook was used to herd the sheep. Incidentally, Jesus is pictured not only with his shepherd's staff, but at Revelations 12, verse 5, and Revelation 19, verse 15, is also said to rule with a rod of iron. And I have pictures here of all of this. You can't see it, but you can go to the library and find this stuff. Our research has been thorough, and we have managed to place members of Kaji within the Masonic lodges, and we have verified everything that we are telling you here now. We have infiltrated the lodge. In Jeremiah chapter 18, verse 2 through 6, and Isaiah chapter 64, verse 8, we see the God of the Old Testament portrayed in a different way. Here, he is said to be the great potter who fashions man on a potter's wheel. Almighty God, the great potter. In Jeremiah chapter 18, let me read to you what it says. The word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Arise, and go down to the potter's house, and there I will cause thee to hear my words. Then I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrought a work on the wheels. And the vessel that he made of clay was marred in the hand of the potter. So he made it again, another vessel, as seemed good to the potter to make it. Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, O house of Israel, cannot I do with you as this potter? Saith the Lord. Behold, as the clay is in the potter's hand, so are ye in mine hand, O house of Israel. In Isaiah chapter 64, But now, O Lord, thou art our Father, we are the clay, and thou our potter, and we are all the work of thy hand. The potter story was Egyptian, 1,000 years before it was written by the writers of the Bible. And I have a picture here taken from Egyptian hieroglyphics, and you can find this in a book called The African Belief in God. It shows the hieroglyphics taken right off of the Egyptian temples, and it shows the god Nemu fashioning the body of one of the Ptolemies on his potter's wheel. And here's another picture, the god Nemu fashioning a man upon a potter's table, and behind him stands Thoth, marking his span of life on a staff. In Egypt, God's risen son was Horus. At 12 noon he became the Most High. In this exalted position he became the mediator between God and man. His name was Amun-Ra. Ra equals ray of the sun. His shepherds on earth were called priests of Amun. They would direct their prayers to the invisible God, the Father, through his mediator, Amun-Ra. And God's Son was the great Amun with his rays. In the New Testament, he, the Son, is still called, at 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 20, and Revelations chapter 1, verse 7, and Revelations chapter 3, verse 14, the Amen. At the end of prayers in the temples of Egypt, they would say, Amen. How does that grab you? Now look at the word Israel. Isis, R-A, Ra, El, God. It is the androgynous God, and it's been in front of your eyes all the time. All the time, folks. Anyone who goes to any library and does the research that we have done can reveal that the religion of Mystery Babylon is exactly as I have stated it last Friday night and during this broadcast, and will continue to state it because there is a lot more, folks. We have, in fact, not even yet begun. For this is the only ancient portion, the beginning of the ancient worship of Baal, or Baal as some pronounce it. Ba was the sun, El means God. And that was the beginning of the end of our civilization as we know it if we do not wake up now. I firmly believe, and I live my life according to this, that I owe my first allegiance to my God and Jesus Christ. My second allegiance I owe to the Constitution of the United States of America, and my third allegiance to my family. And the reason my allegiance is that in that order is because God endowed man with unalienable rights. The Constitution protects those rights, and the family is thus able to survive and be protected and thrive. And the family is the basic unit of civilization. Period. And I further believe that any man or woman without principles that they are ready and willing to die for at any given moment that they are called upon to do it are already dead and are of no use or consequence to anyone, not even themselves. Understand what I just said. I have to take a short break, folks. Don't go away. I'll be right back after this short pause. Isis was the patroness of the magical arts among the Egyptians. The use to which magic should be put is revealed in the Osirian cycle, where Isis applies the most potent of her charms and invocations to accomplish the resurrection of Osiris. In other words, the redemption of the human soul. That the gods of Egypt were elements of a profound magical system and possessed a significance far different from that advanced by modern Egyptologists is certain. The various deities of the Nile Valley were elements of an elaborate magical metaphysical system, a kind of ceremonial Kabbalah. This cannot be denied. But even when impressed with the reality of this fact, the modern Egyptologist still balks. Supposing, he asks, that the Egyptians did possess an elaborate metaphysical doctrine, of what value is its rediscovery in an age when the natural has been demonstrated to be mediocre and the supernatural non-existent? Even if these extinct persons whose mummies clutter up our museums were the custodians of some mysterious lore, we have simply outgrown it. Let the dead past bury its dead, they say. We prefer to live in an era of enlightenment, an enlightenment which you would blight by asking us to espouse the superstitions of our remote ancestors. These so-called superstitions, however, it is interesting to note, die hard. In fact, they do not die at all, but insinuate themselves as a discordant note in our matter-of-fact existences. McCall's magazine published some time ago an article by Edgar Wallace entitled The Curse of Amun-Ra, dealing with the phenomena attendant upon the opening of the tomb of the pharaoh Tutankhamun. After vividly describing the curse of Amun-Ra, the author sums up the effect of this curse upon those who came in contact with the tomb or its contents. His statements are in substance as follows. At the time the tomb was opened, the party present at the excavations included the Earl of Carnarvon, Howard Carter and his secretary, Dick Bethel, M. Benedict, the French archaeologist, and M. Pasanova. Of these, only one, Howard Carter, remains alive. Now that was at the time of the article. Colonel Aubrey Herbert, Carnarvon's half-brother, and Evelyn White, who also entered the tomb, were both dead within a year, one by suicide. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who took an X-ray of the mummy, was also dead within 12 months. And Professor Lafleur of McGill University, the first American scientist to examine the death chamber, did not leave Luxor alive. Wolfe Joel visited the tomb and was dead within a year. Jay Gould was taken ill within the tomb and died. Attendants whose duty it was to look after the exhibit from the tomb in the Cairo Museum also sickened and died. 7 French authors and journalists visited the tomb, and 6 were dead within 2 years. When they unveiled Tutankhamun, they found a mark upon his face, and by a strange coincidence, the mark left upon the face of Lord Carnarvon, which presumably caused his death, was in exactly the same spot and of similar appearance. Nor does this list include the numerous native workmen who perished from the curse. Only recently, another name was added to the long list associated with the tragedy. Arthur Weigall, after a long and mysterious illness, similar to that defined in the curse, is the most recent victim. The eminent authority on antiquities, Dr. Martis, said, quote, "The Egyptians for 7,000 years possessed the secret of surrounding their mummies with some dynamic force of which we have only the faintest idea," unquote. Over the entrance to the tomb of Tutankhamun was a magical tablet inscribed with strange hieroglyphics. Dr. Martis named this tablet the Stela of Malediction, for it pronounced a fearful curse upon any sacrilegious person who might violate the sanctuary of the deified head. And it was called the Stele. The words upon the stela were as follows: "O ye beings from above, O ye beings from below, phantoms riding the breaths of men, ye of the crossroads and of the great highways, wanderers beneath the shade of night, and ye from the abysses of the west, on the fringes of the twilight, dwellers in the caverns of obscurity, who rouse terrors and shuddering, and ye walkers by night, whom I will not name, friends of the moon, and ye intangible inhabitants of the world of night, O people, O denizens of the tombs, all of you approach and be my witnesses and my respondents. Let the hand raised against my form be withered. Let them be destroyed who attack my name, my foundation, my effigies, the images like unto me," unquote. Can modern Egyptologists and scientists in all branches and departments view lightly the culture of the Egyptians if their researches into the forces of nature gave them such strange power and enabled them to master natural laws of which modern learning has no knowledge or conception? Did you know that Lars Hansen was reared in the Stele group? Did you know that a very famous talk show host who covers for the Masons all the time was a member? Also was heavily involved with the Communist Party? Did you know these things? Do you ever bother to check, you who listen to these people and believe them blindly? You, the sheeple of the world? Circumstances so extraordinary as the curse of King Tutankhamun simply overtaxed the theory of mere coincidence, folks. Nor is this an isolated case, as those will remember who read the accounts of the Cleopatra mummy curse many years ago. It will also be noted that in this age of moral certitudes, the story of the Tutankhamun curse had no sooner been broadcast than several of our large museums were deluged by gifts of Egyptian antiquities from private individuals who no longer desired to own them. And these persons, most of them well educated, as modern education goes, were not superstitious. They were just careful. The following article appeared in an English newspaper in